You wake at 500 hours as you have every day for 37 years. The alarm doesn't sound. You don't need it anymore. Your body knows. Decades of conditioning have carved the rhythm into your flesh, into your very cells. Before consciousness fully returns, before thought crystallizes into awareness, your muscles are already moving. Right hand reaching for the prayer beads on the nightstand. Left hand touching the small aquila mounted above your sleeping mat. Fingers finding their familiar positions, worn smooth by years of devotion. The words should come automatically. They always do. The litany of morning devotion, 147 words spoken at the moment of waking, offering your first conscious thought to Him. You've recited it 13,505 times, once for every morning of your adult life. The syllables are muscle memory, neural pathways so deeply grooved that you could speak them in your sleep. You do speak them in your sleep. But today, as your lips part to form the words, as your tongue moves to shape the first syllable of His sacred name, something happens. Nothing comes. Not rebellion, not refusal, not even hesitation. Just absence. A blank space where certainty should be. Your mouth is open. Your vocal cords are prepared. The breath is drawn. But the name, His name, the most important word in the Imperium, the foundation stone of your reality, simply isn't there. For 3 seconds, you exist in a void. Let me show you what 3 seconds feels like when your entire universe depends on them. Second one, your eyes are still closed. You're still in that liminal space between sleep and waking. The blankness hasn't fully registered yet. It's just a flutter, like missing a step on familiar stairs. Your brain reaches for the word reflexively, the way your hand would reach out to catch yourself. But your fingers close on air. The word isn't where it should be. The shape of it, the sound of it, the way your mouth knows how to form it, all of that is just gone. And in that absence, you feel something you haven't felt in 37 years. Silence. Pure, unstructured silence in the space where devotion lives. Second two, your eyes snap open. The darkness of your hab unit swims into focus. The familiar water stains on the ceiling, the Emperor's face watching from the wall shrine, the red glow of the hive's ever-present sodium lights filtering through the grime-covered window. Reality is still there. You're still here, but something fundamental has shifted. Your heart, which was beating at its normal resting rate of 62 beats per minute, suddenly doubles. 124, 130. You can feel it now, a hammering in your chest, blood rushing in your ears. Your fingers tighten on the prayer beads so hard the worn metal edges cut into your palm. The pain is sharp, real, grounding, but it doesn't bring the words back. Panic begins to rise like water in a flooding compartment. Your throat constricts. Your mouth goes dry, so dry you can taste it, a coppery tang like blood or fear. Second three, thought crystallizes into conscious terror. The word is gone, His name is gone. You Pious Kendall, scribe third class of the administratum, citizen in good standing of Hive Tertius on the world of Mortia Secundus, faithful servant of 42 years, have forgotten the Emperor's name. The magnitude of this crashes over you like a physical force. This isn't fatigue. This isn't distraction. This is the unthinkable. Heresy flowers in the gaps of memory. The warp seeps through cracks in faith. You've heard the sermons. You know what this means. Your breath comes in short, sharp gasps. The room tilts. You're falling even though you're still lying down. Falling into the emptiness where His name should be. And then like a dam breaking, it returns. Emperor. The word thunders back into your consciousness with such force that you actually gasp aloud. Emperor, of course. How could you have forgotten? It's right there where it's always been, solid and immovable as the hive's foundation. The relief is so intense it's almost painful, a physical sensation of pieces clicking back into place, order reasserting itself over chaos. Your voice, rough and trembling, speaks the litany. Emperor of mankind, master of holy Terra, He who sits upon the golden throne, to you I offer the first breath of waking, the first thought of consciousness, the first devotion of the day. The words pour out in a rush, tumbling over each other. You speak them too fast, then slow down, forcing yourself to enunciate each syllable properly. By the time you reach the end, your breathing has almost returned to normal. Your heart still races, but it's slowing. 110, 90, 80. You sit up on your sleeping mat. The HAB unit is exactly as it was yesterday. 4 meters by 3 meters. Corrugated metal walls painted in standard administratum gray. The small cooking unit in the corner. The data slate charging station. The waste reclamation fixture. The wall shrine with its candle and icon. And everywhere his face. On the official calendar. On your work permit framed above your desk. On the label of your nutrient ration tin. On the identification tags hanging from your neck. The Aquila symbol on your water dispenser, your clothing locker, your door panel. You touch the prayer beads again, counting them. 49 beads, 7 circuits of 7. Your fingers know every bead, every worn spot, every micro scratch in the metal. This is real. This is solid. This is safe. You tell yourself it was nothing, a glitch, neural misfiring. You're 54 years old, perhaps age is affecting your recall speed. You've been working longer hours lately, processing the tithe assessments for the Western HAB stacks. Stress, fatigue. The recycled air in this level of the hive has been particularly stale, maybe a mild oxygen deprivation. These things happen. The human body is a machine, and machines sometimes stutter before resuming normal function. You stand. Your legs are steady. You light the candle at the wall shrine and speak the prayer of daily renewal. The words come perfectly. See, everything is fine. You wash your face in the small basin, using exactly half your daily water ration as regulations require. You dress in your administratum robes, drab gray synth cloth, frayed at the cuffs, the Aquila embroidered on the chest fading from repeated cleaning. You pin your identification badge to your collar. You gather your data slates and styluses. The door to your HAB unit opens with its familiar pneumatic hiss. The corridor outside is already crowded with your neighbors, thousands of them, flowing toward the transit lifts that will carry you down to the work levels. The morning devotion bells are ringing, 17 different tones cascading across the hive, each one encoding a different verse of the Imperial Creed. You mouth the words silently as you walk, timing your recitation to match the bells. Around you, everyone else is doing the same, lips moving, heads bowed, hands touching Aquilas worn around necks, pinned to chests, tattooed on forearms. You join the stream of humanity pouring through the arteries of the hive. This is your life. This is everyone's life. This is the only life, and yet. As you stand pressed shoulder to shoulder in the transit lift, descending through hundreds of meters of rockcrete and plasteel, as the recorded sermon plays through crackling speakers above your head, as the voice of Confessor Matthias reminds you that to forget him is to embrace damnation, to lose his name is to lose your soul, something cold touches the base of your spine. A thought you don't want to think, but what if it happens again? You squeeze your eyes shut and recite the litany of protection. The words come easily. His name is solid in your mind. Everything is fine. You're imagining problems that don't exist. This is nothing. You're faithful. You've always been faithful. This morning was an aberration, a momentary lapse that will never repeat. But even as you tell yourself this, even as you arrive at your desk in the vast administratum processing hall, even as you begin your daily work, logging tithe assessments and tax calculations and population metrics, even as the day proceeds in its normal, grinding, endless routine, the question remains, what if next time the name doesn't come back? You don't know it yet, but this is the last normal day of your life. The last day before you understand what you really are. The last day before you learn that in the Imperium of Man, memory isn't something you possess. It's something that possesses you. Let me show you what a day looks like in the Imperium. Not the grand cathedrals, not the Imperial Palace, not the battles or the heroics or the space marines in their gleaming armor. I want to show you something else, something more fundamental, more terrifying. I want to show you how it's impossible to forget. The morning devotion bells that woke you, those 17 cascading tones, they're not just bells. They're a neural mnemonic device engineered by the Ministerum's cognitive architecture programs during the 38th millennium. Each tone is calibrated to a specific frequency that resonates with the language processing centers of the human brain. When you hear them, when you've heard them every morning for your entire life, the sounds don't just remind you to pray. They trigger prayer. Your brain fires the neural pathways associated with devotion before you're even fully conscious. It's not voluntary. It's mechanical, Pavlovian. This is by design. Follow 3 different citizens through their day. Watch how many times they encounter him. The factory worker, Gren Hesser, age 31, Hab level 9200. He wakes to the bells, 17 reminders before he's even out of bed. He washes his face in the communal hygiene station. Above every sink, an aquila. The water itself tastes of sacred oils, the Mechanicus blessing mixed into the recycled water supply. Chemical communion. He dresses in his work coveralls. Stamped on the chest, "In his name we toil." He takes his morning ration bar from the dispenser, wrapped in paper printed with the opening verses of the Lectitio Divinitatis. He reads them while he eats. Everyone does. There's nothing else to read while you eat. The walk to the factory takes 22 minutes. In that time, Gren passes 43 wall-mounted icons, 16 holographic displays showing the emperor enthroned, 8 street preachers delivering sermons at major intersections, 312 citizens wearing visible aquila symbols, and every single door he passes, every hab entrance, every shop front, every administrative office bears the inscription, "His will be done." At the factory entrance, he stops at the loyalty verification checkpoint, places his hand on the scanner, recites the worker's oath, "Emperor grant me strength, Emperor grant me purpose, Emperor grant me the will to serve unto death." The scanner checks his biometrics against his devotional records, prayer attendance, shrine offerings, confession frequency. Only when it confirms his loyalty does the gate open. Inside the factory floor, 2,000 workers assembling bolter components for the Imperial Guard. The work is monotonous, dangerous, mind-numbing, but every hour on the hour the klaxon sound and work stops. The hourly devotion. Everyone turns to face the east wall where a massive stained glass window depicts the Emperor in glory. 2 minutes of prayer, then back to work. This happens 12 times during the shift. 12 times you stop what you're doing to remember why you're doing it. At the end of the shift, before anyone can leave, there's the litany of completed labor. 7 minutes, standing at attention, thanking him for the privilege of service. Gren has been awake for 16 hours. In that time, he has prayed 18 times, seen his image 643 times, and heard his name spoken or sung 2,112 times. And this is a quiet day. The mid-hive merchant, Catella Vorn, age 48, owns a small shop selling devotional items, candles, prayer beads, icons, miniature aquilas. Her work is devotion. Every transaction is a religious act. When she opens her shop, she lights 14 candles at the threshold shrine and recites the merchant's prayer. "Emperor, let those who enter seek you. Let those who purchase honor you. Let those who depart carry your light." Her customers don't just buy items, they confess to her. The man purchasing prayer beads for his daughter's confirmation ceremony tells her about his doubts, his fears that his faith isn't strong enough. She absolves him, not officially, she's not ordained, but through the social ritual of shared devotion. This happens dozens of times a day. Every interaction in the Imperium carries theological weight. You don't just sell a candle, you facilitate a sacred act. You don't just buy prayer beads, you demonstrate your commitment to remembrance. Catella's shop is on a major thoroughfare. Through her window, she can see the street preacher who stands there every day from dawn to dusk. He's been there for 6 years. Same corner, same sermon delivered in an endless loop. He watches, he judges, he remembers. Will you be found wanting? His voice is hoarse, damaged from years of constant preaching. But he doesn't stop. He can't stop. Because if he stops, if that corner goes silent even for a day, someone else will take it, and he'll lose his purpose, his identity, his only claim to meaning in a galaxy that devours meaning like the void devours light. In the Imperium, even madness is channeled into devotion. The lower noble, Castellan Mordecai, age 63, third son of a minor noble house. His hab unit is larger than yours or Gren's or Catella's. 8 rooms, climate-controlled, with real wood furniture imported from an agri-world 3 systems away. Wealth, privilege, power. But even here, even at this level of imperial society, the architecture of devotion is total. He wakes in a room where the ceiling is painted with scenes from the emperor's life. When he opens his eyes, the first thing he sees is the unification wars. He dresses with the help of a servitor, a lobotomized half-human cyborg that whispers prayers in binary code as it fastens his robes. His breakfast is served on plates bearing the seal of the ecclesiarchy. The food itself is blessed, not symbolically, but literally. A priest comes to his residence every morning to sanctify his meals with holy water and incense. His work today is administrative. He's reviewing trade agreements for his family's holdings. But even this, even the dry minutiae of business, is framed in theological terms. Every contract begins with the phrase, "In the emperor's name, let commerce reflect his order." Every signature is witnessed by an ecclesiarchy notary who ensures that no clause contradicts imperial dogma. There are pages of legal text in these contracts, but there are also prayers. Prayers of binding, prayers of agreement, prayers of transaction. Mordecai attends a dinner party in the evening. 20 guests, all of his social class. They drink wine, real wine, not the synthetic swill available to workers, and eat delicacies that most citizens have never heard of. They discuss art, politics, scandal. They seem, for a moment, almost secular, almost free. But watch what happens when the chronometer strikes the hour of reflection. Everyone stops. Mid-sentence, mid-bite, mid-laugh, stops. Because this hour across the entire hive is designated for silent prayer. For 3 minutes, no one speaks. No one moves. No one does anything but bow their heads and remember him, even in pleasure, even in privilege. Even when you have wealth enough to insulate yourself from the grinding horror of imperial life, you cannot escape. 3 citizens, 3 different lives, but the same pattern, the same omnipresence. Now let me give you numbers, because numbers don't lie, and the numbers are where the true horror lies. In our world, you might see advertisements 5,000 times a day. Brands, logos, messages designed to make you buy things. It feels overwhelming, oppressive, inescapable. In the Imperium, the average citizen encounters the emperor's image 50,000 times before noon, 50,000 by midday, on currency, on documents, on walls, on clothing, on tools, on vehicles, on packaging, on screens, on buildings, on statues, on tattoos, on scars, on weapons, on children's toys, on medical equipment, on gravestones. The Aquila is everywhere because it must be everywhere, because every surface is an opportunity for remembrance. Every object is a chance for devotion. Every moment is a test of faith, and it's not passive. You don't just see these images. You're expected to respond to them. Touch your Aquila when you pass a shrine. Bow your head when you see his face. Mouth the words of a prayer when the hour bells ring. These aren't suggestions. They're social requirements, enforced not by law but by the crushing weight of collective expectation. The person next to you is watching, making sure you're faithful. Because if you're not faithful, you might be corrupted. And if you're corrupted, you're a threat. And threats must be eliminated. Paranoia and piety become indistinguishable. The children's litany, the prayer every imperial citizen learns at age 3, goes like this. He is the light, he is the wall, he is the breath, he is all. 4 lines, simple, easy for a child to memorize, but think about what it means. He is the breath, not he gives breath. Not he created breath, he is breath. You are breathing him, your lungs fill with his essence. To stop breathing is to stop remembering. To forget him is to suffocate. The metaphor is embedded in the language itself. And this is what children learn before they can read. Before they understand what the Imperium is or why it exists, or what the warp is, or what chaos means. Before they have any context for what faith is supposed to be, they learn that the Emperor and existence itself are the same thing. There is no difference between living and remembering. You cannot have one without the other. This is the foundation. This is what's built into your neural architecture before you're even capable of questioning it. Let me tell you about something you won't find in official records. Something whispered about in inquisitorial briefings, buried in archived data that even most inquisitors never see. It's called the cognitive fortification doctrine, developed during M38 after the Age of Apostasy, when the ecclesiarchy solidified its power and codified the methods of maintaining faith across a million worlds. The doctrine states, the human mind is a fortress, every thought is a wall, every memory is a gate. The enemy seeks entrance through lapses in vigilance. Therefore, vigilance must be total. The emperor must occupy every thought, every memory, every moment of consciousness. Not as an act of love, but as an act of survival. The mind that does not actively remember is the mind that passively forgets, and forgetting is the first act of heresy. This isn't poetry, this isn't metaphor, this is military strategy applied to human consciousness. The doctrine goes on to specify methods. Architectural design that places religious iconography in the direct sightline of all activities, chronometric systems that segment the day into devotional blocks, linguistic modification that embeds theological concepts into everyday speech, mandatory prayer schedules that interrupt work at irregular interval to prevent habitual dissociation, social reinforcement through collective witnessing, chemical supplementation of water and food supplies with compounds that enhance suggestibility during prayer, and for the lower hive levels, where poverty and desperation make people vulnerable to doubt, direct neural intervention, prayer chips, small devices no larger than a grain of rice, implanted in the base of the skull. They monitor neural activity. When the brain goes too long without devotional thought patterns, 30 minutes is the standard threshold the chip activates, a small electrical pulse, not painful, just insistent, a reminder. Your brain suddenly, involuntarily begins praying. The words form themselves. Your inner voice speaks them without your conscious control. It feels like your own thought. You believe it is your own thought, but it's not. It's the chip, maintaining your faith, protecting you from yourself. 17% of Imperial citizens in hive worlds have these implants. 600 million people on Mordia Secundus alone. You don't have one. Your devotional compliance scores have always been high enough that you were never flagged for mandatory installation. You should feel grateful, privileged, trusted. But now, standing in your work cubicle, surrounded by 300 other scribes all bent over their data slates, all silently mouthing prayers as they work, you wonder, how many of them are choosing to pray? How many are compelled? How many thoughts in this room are genuine? And how many are manufactured by devices drilled into their brainstems? And here's the question that you don't want to ask but can't stop asking. If faith requires constant, active maintenance, if it needs bells and icons and chips and sermons and peer pressure and chemical reinforcement and architectural manipulation and social enforcement and hourly devotions and mandatory prayers and genetic conditioning and neural implants, then is it really faith at all? Or is it just the most sophisticated brainwashing program ever devised? You push the thought away, that's heresy. Even thinking that is dangerous. The warp listens to doubt. Chaos feeds on questions, but the thought lingers. Because this morning, for 3 seconds, all of that conditioning failed. All of the architecture, all of the reinforcement, all of the lifetime of devotion, it wasn't enough. The name vanished. The fortress had a crack, and you need to understand something. Something that the ecclesiarchy knows but will never say out loud. That the Inquisition understands but considers too dangerous to admit. That the highest levels of imperial governance have built their entire civilization around. The emperor isn't an external figure to be remembered. He's the cognitive operating system. Forgetting him isn't like forgetting a name. It's like forgetting the concept of gravity while standing on a cliff edge. Not metaphorically, literally. Because when the emperor's presence fades from an imperial mind, when that cognitive space opens up, when the fortress walls crack, something else notices, and it begins, very gently, very patiently, to seep through. Day 3. You're standing in the morning assembly hall with 300 of your fellow administratum workers. This happens every day before work begins. 15 minutes of collective devotion led by your sector's prayer master, an elderly man named Corvinus who served in this role for 40 years. His voice echoes through the vaulted space, and you speak the responses in unison with everyone else. Corvinus, who sits upon the throne. Everyone, the master of mankind. Corvinus, who guides our hands. Everyone, the Emperor Eternal. Corvinus, who shall we serve until death? And here, right here, in the middle of a prayer you've recited 3,000 times, your lips move but no sound comes out. The words of the Sanctus Imperator, the most basic call and response in the Imperial liturgy. You know them, but your mouth is moving silently, forming shapes that carry no meaning. Around you, 300 voices speak as one, he who stands between humanity and the darkness. You mouth the words a half-second late, trying to catch up. Did anyone notice? You glance left, then right. No one is looking at you. Everyone's eyes are forward, focused on Corvinus. The moment passes, the prayer continues, but you noticed. Day 8. You're transcribing an imperial decree about tithe assessments when you need to look something up in the Administratum-style guide. Proper formatting for official documents. There's a section on the mandatory honorifics, how to correctly reference him in written text. You've consulted this section hundreds of times. You could probably recite it from memory, except you can't quite remember what he looks like. You turn to the icon on your desk, a small brass aquila with his face embossed on the back. You stare at it. The stern features, the hard eyes. The weight of 10,000 years etched into immortal features. You've seen this face your entire life. It's the most recognizable face in human space. But as you look at it, the features don't quite cohere. It's like trying to focus on something underwater. You see the individual elements, eyes, nose, mouth, jaw, but they won't assemble into a unified whole. You blink, close your eyes, open them again. It's just an image, just metal and shadow. You sit there for 20 minutes staring at this icon, trying to see him, trying to feel the presence you're supposed to feel, the connection, the devotion, but there's nothing. It's like looking at abstract art, meaningless shapes that refuse to resolve into meaning. Finally, you put the icon away in your desk drawer. You tell yourself your eyes are tired, too many hours staring at data slates, age catching up with you, perhaps you need optical correction. You make a mental note to visit the Medici office for an eye exam. You don't go. You know what you'd have to tell them if you did. Day 15. Loyalty Verification Day. Once a month, every Administratum worker undergoes a random faith assessment. It's presented as routine, bureaucratic, just the Imperium making sure its servants remain pure. Usually it's nothing. A few prayers, a brief interview, and you're cleared for another month. Your name appears on the randomization list. You sit across from Confessor Adjutant Halleck, a middle-aged woman with scars on her hands that suggest she wasn't always an administrative priest. She has a data slate in front of her, your devotional compliance record displayed on the screen. Church attendance, exemplary. Shrine offerings, regular. Confession frequency, well above minimum requirements. Your entire life quantified and rated, everything looks perfect. Recite the prayer of Imperial Ascension, she says without looking up. You know this prayer. It's long, 47 verses chronicling the Emperor's rise from warlord to God. You've spoken it at every major religious holiday for your entire adult life. You open your mouth. The first 3 verses come easily, automatically. But then somewhere around verse 4 you hit a blank spot. The words that should come next just aren't there. You hesitate just for a moment, just a flicker of uncertainty. And you see her eyes flick up from the data slate. She knows. Panic floods through you, but you're a scribe. You work with words and data and information. Your mind pivots, drawing on fragments of other prayers, other liturgies, improvising verse 4 using language from similar devotionals. Your voice doesn't waver, you keep going. Verse 5, verse 6, 7, 8. You make it to the end. She looks at you for a long moment. You can see her deciding, weighing, this could go either way. A failed loyalty verification means investigation, interrogation, psychological evaluation, potential re-education, or worse, "Acceptable," she finally says. "You may go." You stand, walk to the door, your legs want to run but you keep them steady, measured, calm. You exit the interview room and return to your desk and sit down and stare at your work for 15 minutes without seeing any of it. You fooled her. You improvised your way through a sacred prayer and she didn't notice. Which means either she's incompetent at her job, unlikely, given the ecclesiarchy's standards, or the prayer itself isn't actually as important as its perfect recitation. It's the performance of faith that matters, the social ritual. As long as you go through the motions convincingly, as long as you produce the right sounds in the right order, the content is secondary. This thought should comfort you. It doesn't. Because if faith is just performance, just recitation, just memorized sounds and practiced gestures, then what's the difference between genuine devotion and perfect mimicry? What's the difference between remembering and pretending to remember? Day 23. You haven't thought about the Emperor in 4 hours. 4 hours. You're aware of this because you check the chronometer and count backward to the last time you consciously thought about him. It was during the noon devotion. That was at 1200 hours. It's now 1600. 4 hours have passed and you've been so absorbed in your work, calculating population density metrics for the tithe assessment, that you simply didn't. This should be impossible. The longest any Imperial citizen should go without a devotional thought is 30 minutes, and that's usually only during sleep. The hourly prayers, the constant reminders, the ambient sermon broadcasts, the icons everywhere. It's designed to make extended absence of faith structurally impossible. But here you are. And the truly terrifying part isn't that it happened. It's that you didn't notice until you deliberately checked. The absence wasn't painful, wasn't distressing. You just worked. Thought about population metrics and food production ratios and housing capacity. Mundane, secular thoughts. Thoughts that existed in a space where the Emperor simply wasn't present. And it felt normal. You sit there, staring at the chronometer, and something cold unfolds in your chest. Not fear exactly, more like vertigo. Like standing at the edge of a vast drop and realizing there's no railing, nothing stopping you from stepping forward into the void. You force yourself to pray. Right there at your desk, you bow your head and recite the litany of renewed faith. The words come. They always come when you consciously reach for them, but they feel hollow, performative, like you're reading from a script rather than speaking from conviction. When did that change? You don't know. You can't pinpoint the exact moment when devotion became performance, when certainty became doubt, when his presence, so total and encompassing and inescapable, began to feel like weight instead of comfort. Maybe it was always like this. Maybe you were always just going through the motions and you're only now noticing because the motions are failing. Maybe everyone is. Day 30. You're walking home from work, taking a route that leads past one of the district's major shrines. It's a beautiful structure, by Hive standards at least. Stone instead of plasteel. Actual stained glass windows instead of projected hollows. A statue of the Emperor, 3 meters tall, arms outstretched, blessing the faithful who pass beneath. You've walked past this shrine every day for 14 years. Today, you decide to go inside. The interior is dim, lit by hundreds of candles. The air is thick with incense, sacred promethium mixed with blessed oils, designed to elevate the mind toward the divine. There are perhaps 20 people here kneeling at prayer rails, heads bowed. The silence is profound, respectful, holy. You approach the altar. Above it, dominating the space, is an icon of him on the golden throne, the most sacred image in the Imperium, the moment of his sacrifice. 10,000 years of eternal agony, all for humanity's survival. You look at it, you try to feel something, anything, gratitude, awe, love, fear. The things you're supposed to feel in the presence of the divine. But all you see is painted ceramic, colored glass, light and shadow arranged in a specific pattern. There's no transcendence, no connection, no sense that you're in the presence of anything more than artistic craftsmanship. You kneel at the prayer rail because that's what you're supposed to do. You bow your head because everyone else's head is bowed. You mouth the words of prayer because silence would be suspicious. But inside, in the space where faith lives, there is only void. You stay there for 10 minutes. Then you stand and leave and walk home and eat your evening ration and prepare for bed and stare at the ceiling of your hab unit for 2 hours before sleep finally comes. And in those 2 hours, you think a thought that once would have been unthinkable. What if I was never really faithful? What if it was always just fear? Fear of punishment, fear of social ostracism, fear of investigation, fear of what happens to those who doubt. Fear that kept you praying, kept you devoted, kept you performing the rituals with such perfection that you convinced even yourself that the performance was real. But fear and faith aren't the same thing. And now that the fear is fading, now that the absence doesn't hurt, doesn't feel wrong, doesn't trigger the panic it should, you're left with a question you can't answer. Who am I without him? Day 37. The dreams have started. You're standing in a vast throne room. You've never been to Terra, never seen the Imperial Palace except in hollows and artistic renderings, but you know that's where you are. The Sanctum Imperialis. The throne itself rises before you, golden and terrible and magnificent, but the figure sitting on it isn't right. You can't quite see it clearly. Every time you try to focus, it shifts, blurs, becomes something else. Sometimes it looks like the Emperor, or what you think he should look like based on a lifetime of icons and images. Sometimes it's just darkness shaped roughly human. Sometimes it's nothing at all, just an empty throne with the shadow of absence sitting upon it. And then it speaks, not in words, not in sound, just meaning poured directly into your mind. You can rest now. You wake up gasping. Your hab unit is dark. The chrono reads 3:47 hours. You're drenched in sweat, your heart pounding so hard it hurts. But underneath the fear, underneath the shock of waking from a nightmare, there's something else. Relief. Because for just a moment in that dream, you felt something you haven't felt in weeks. Something you haven't felt maybe in your entire life. You felt seen, not judged, not weighed, not measured against standards of devotion and compliance, just seen, acknowledged, given permission to be tired, to put down the burden, to rest. You sit on the edge of your sleeping mat, head in your hands, and you realize that the absence isn't empty anymore. Something is filling it. And the most terrifying part, the part that makes your breath catch and your hands shake and your mind recoil from its own thoughts, is that it feels kind. Day 43. You're transcribing a shipping manifest when your hand moves without your conscious direction. The stylus draws a symbol in the margin of the data slate. You don't recognize it. 8 lines radiating from a central point, each line curved in a way that hurts to look at directly. Geometric but wrong, orderly but chaotic. You stare at it for a full minute before you realize what you've done. You try to erase it. Your hand doesn't move. You will your hand to move, to delete the symbol, to purge it from the data slate. But your fingers stay still, frozen. And for just a moment, you feel something vast and patient and infinitely amused observing you through your own eyes. Then the feeling passes. Your hand is yours again. You erase the symbol quickly, checking to make sure no one saw. No one did. Everyone is absorbed in their own work. But the symbol is still there, burned into your memory. You can see it when you close your eyes. 8 curved lines. A pattern that means something in a language you don't speak but somehow understand. It means welcome. You don't go home that night. You can't. Because going home means being alone with your thoughts, and you're starting to realize that your thoughts aren't entirely your own anymore. Instead, you walk down through the hive levels, past your own hab tier, down into the lower sections where you rarely go. The air gets thicker, hotter, the smell of machinery and recycled sweat and desperation. The crowds get denser, the lighting dimmer. You're not looking for anything, not consciously, but your feet seem to know where they're going. You end up in a small district shrine, not the beautiful one near your hab. This one is crude, makeshift, an alcove in a corridor barely 2 meters deep. Someone has mounted an aquila made of scrap metal on the wall. A few candles burn in front of it. There's graffiti around the edges, prayers carved into the rockcrete by people who couldn't afford data slates or proper devotional materials. You stand there looking at this shrine and you feel nothing, not sadness, not guilt, not even anger, just absence. A blank space where devotion used to be, where it's supposed to be, a voice beside you. It doesn't work for you anymore either, does it? You turn, there's a woman standing next to you. Maybe 40 years old, maybe 60. It's hard to tell in the lower hive where aging happens faster. She's not looking at you. She's looking at the shrine. Her lips are moving, reciting prayers, but her eyes are empty. You should walk away. Report her. This is the moment where loyalty demands action. She's admitted doubt, implied heresy. Every Imperial citizen knows what you're supposed to do, but you don't. Instead, you hear yourself say, "No, it doesn't." She nods slowly, still not looking at you. How long? 6 weeks, you. 3 months, started with the dreams. You feel your blood go cold. What dreams? The throne room, the voice, the one that says you can rest. She finally turns to look at you, and in her eyes you see your own fear reflected back, but also recognition, understanding, the knowledge that you're not alone, that whatever is happening to you is happening to others. She speaks quietly, barely above a whisper. There are more of us, not many. We don't organize. We don't meet regularly. Too dangerous. But sometimes, in places like this, we find each other. What's happening to us? She shakes her head. I don't know, but I think we're forgetting how to be afraid. And in the Imperium, fear is what keeps you faithful. Without fear. She doesn't finish the sentence. She doesn't need to. Without fear, there's just the void. And the void is very patient. And it's offering something the Imperium never has. Peace. You stand there with this stranger, 2 people who should be enemies, 2 people who should turn each other into the nearest confessor or Arbeitspatrol. Instead, you stand in silence, sharing the terrible intimacy of mutual heresy. Finally, she says, "Be careful. They're watching for this. The Inquisition has a name for it. They call it spontaneous apostatic amnesia syndrome. And when they find us, what do they do?" She looks at the shrine one more time, then back at you. They make sure the forgetting stops, one way or another. She walks away, you never see her again, but now you know, you're not broken, you're not unique, you're not alone. This is happening to others, to many others, and the Imperium is hunting all of you. The woman from the shrine you never learned her name was right. Once you know what to look for, you start seeing them everywhere. The signs are subtle, imperceptible to anyone who isn't watching for them, but you're watching now. You can't help it. Every interaction, every prayer session, every moment of collective devotion, you're scanning faces, looking for the telltale markers of absence. It starts with the eyes. There's a particular quality to the gaze of true believers, an intensity, a focus. When they look at an icon of the Emperor, when they speak his name, there's a light there. Not literal, nothing so obvious, but something in the way the muscles around the eyes tighten, the way the pupils dilate slightly, the micro-expressions of genuine emotion. Faith has a face, and once you know what it looks like, you can see when it's missing. You see its absence in the young factory worker who stands next to you during the transit lift devotions. His lips move perfectly, forming every word of the prayer of descent. But his eyes are empty, dead. He's performing faith with the precision of a servitor executing programmed functions. No conviction, no presence, just sounds shaped like devotion. You see it in the merchant at the ration distribution center. She touches her aquila pendant when the hourly bells ring, makes the sign of blessing, bows her head. All the right gestures, but the movement is automatic, muscle memory. Her mind is somewhere else entirely. You can see it in the unfocused quality of her stare, the way her hands complete the ritual while her attention remains on her inventory data slate. You see it in the elderly man who sits in the back row of evening mass. He's been coming here longer than you've been alive, probably. Everyone knows him. Brother Matthias, they call him. Pious as they come, first to arrive, last to leave. But one evening you notice that during the Eucharistic prayer, the holiest moment of the service, his mouth stops moving, just for a second, just a tiny hesitation where the sacred words should be. No one else sees it, but you do, because you're looking. And once you start looking, you see them everywhere, not many. Maybe 1 in 100, maybe fewer, but they're there. Hidden among the faithful, indistinguishable on the surface, performing devotion with such practiced precision that no one suspects the absence beneath. How many? You start counting. Over the course of a week in your daily routines, you identify 7 people who show the signs. 7 people in your immediate orbit who are going through the motions while feeling nothing. 7 people who have forgotten how to remember him. 7 people who are, like you, one breath away from heresy. The question becomes, do they know about each other? You start to test, carefully. So carefully that even if you're wrong, even if they're genuinely faithful and you're reading absence where there's only distraction, nothing you do will be overtly suspicious. It's like a game, a paranoid, terrifying game where the stakes are your life. During the hourly devotion at work, you deliberately wait an extra half-second before joining the collective prayer. You watch the man 3 desks over, the one whose eyes never quite focus on the wall shrine. Does he notice your delay? Does he wait too, or does he start automatically? He waits. His lips don't move until yours do. He's matching your timing, using you as a reference point because he doesn't have an internal clock for devotion anymore. He's copying, mimicking, using the crowd to hide his absence. At the ration distribution, you deliberately misquote a prayer. Not obviously, you change one word, a minor substitution that maintains the grammatical structure but alters the theological meaning. Emperor above instead of emperor eternal. It's subtle. Most people wouldn't notice, and those who did would probably assume you misspoke. The merchant, the one who touches her aquila automatically, doesn't react at all. She completes the responsive prayer using the wrong version you just introduced. She's not reciting from memory. She's echoing you, following your lead because her own knowledge has gaps. You're in the evening mass, sitting 2 rows behind Brother Matthias. The priest is leading a call-and response prayer. You deliberately stay silent during one of the responses. Not all of them, just one in the middle where your absence won't be obvious to anyone not paying attention. You watch Matthias. He hesitates, just for a fraction of a second. His mouth opens, then closes, then opens again. He wasn't sure if the response had already happened or if it was coming. He was listening for cues from the crowd, and your silence disrupted his reference points. He knows something is wrong, with himself, with the situation, maybe with you. His shoulders tense. After the mass ends, he leaves quickly. Doesn't make eye contact with anyone. You've revealed yourself to him and he to you. But neither of you can acknowledge it, because acknowledgement is admission, and admission is death. The encounters become more frequent, more deliberate. You're at the morning assembly when you notice the woman standing to your left stumbling over the litany of labor. It's the same line where you stumbled 3 weeks ago. The verse that never quite feels right anymore, where the words seem to tangle on your tongue. She catches herself, recovers, continues. But you heard it. You turn your head slightly. Just enough to glance at her, she's already looking at you. The moment stretches. 2 seconds, 3. Eye contact that lasts just long enough to be meaningful. Her expression doesn't change. Yours doesn't either. But something passes between you. A recognition. A mutual acknowledgement of shared absence. Then the moment breaks. You both turn back to face forward. The prayer continues. Nothing has been said, nothing has been done, but you both know she's the first one to reach out. It happens in the Hab corridor 3 days later. You're returning from work when you feel a hand briefly touch your elbow. Light. Could be accidental, could be nothing. But when you turn, she's there and she presses something into your palm before walking away without a word. It's a small piece of parchment, recycled paper, the kind used for prayers. But when you unfold it in the privacy of your Hab unit, there's no prayer written on it, just coordinates. A location in the lower underhive, a time, and a single symbol, 8 curved lines radiating from a center point. The symbol you drew on your data slate, the one that means welcome. You should destroy this note. Report the location to the Arbites. This is a conspiracy, an organized heresy. Everything you've been taught says this is exactly the moment where you should act, where loyalty demands you protect the Imperium from infection. But you don't, because part of you, a part that's growing larger every day, needs to know, needs to understand, needs to see how deep this goes. And because, for the first time in your life, the thought of not being alone in your doubt is more compelling than the thought of remaining safe in your compliance. The underhive location is a basement beneath an abandoned factorum. Water drips from corroded pipes. The air smells of rust and mold and something else. Incense, maybe, or just the ambient chemical taint that permeates everything this far down. You arrive at the specified time, 2300 hours. The darkness is absolute except for a single flickering lumen strip. There are 6 others already there. No one speaks. No one makes introductions. You all just exist in proximity, sharing space, breathing the same air. Being, for this brief moment, in a place where the Emperor's presence isn't mandatory. It's the most dangerous thing any of you have ever done. The woman from the morning assembly is here. The factory worker from the transit lift. Brother Matthias, looking older and more fragile than he ever did in the light of the chapel. 3 others you don't recognize. A young woman with a factory worker's calluses, a middle-aged man with the ink-stained fingers of a scribe like yourself, an elderly woman whose face is seamed with scars from a lifetime of labor. 7 people, 7 out of millions in this hive, 7 who have forgotten how to remember. Finally, the middle-aged scribe speaks. His voice is barely above a whisper. How long? 2 months, the young factory worker says. 6 weeks, you say. 4 months, Brother Matthias admits. I thought I was going mad. You might be, the elderly woman says. We all might be. This could be a psychosis, shared delusion, warp touch without obvious corruption. Does it feel like madness? The woman from the morning assembly asks. Silence, because no, it doesn't. It feels like clarity, like waking up, like seeing the machinery of control for the first time and understanding how completely it's defined your entire existence. I have dreams, the young factory worker says. Someone sitting on a throne, but it's not him, it's something else, and it tells me I can rest. Everyone nods. They all have the same dreams. What's happening to us? You ask. No one has an answer. The possibilities are all terrible: warp corruption, genetic mutation, psychic contamination, unknown Xenos influence, deliberate sabotage, random cognitive decay. None of the explanations are good. All of them end in purging. Brother Matthias speaks, and his voice carries the weight of his years. I've been faithful for 82 years. Since I could speak, I've known his name. I've devoted my entire life to his service, and now, he stops, swallows. Now I can't remember why. I know the reasons intellectually. The Imperium, the survival of humanity, the threat of chaos. I know all of it, but I can't feel it anymore. The connection is gone, and what terrifies me most is that I don't miss it. This admission, raw, honest, vulnerable, opens a floodgate. They talk. Quietly, carefully, but they talk about the progression, the stages. The way it starts with small gaps and grows into vast absences. The phantom sensation of something missing. The cognitive dissonance of knowing you should care while feeling nothing. The creeping realization that maybe you never truly believed, you just feared the consequences of not believing. And the dreams. Everyone has the dreams. The throne room, the figure that isn't the emperor, the voice that offers rest. I looked it up, the ink-stained scribe says. In the classified archives, I shouldn't have access, but he shrugs. Scribes know how to find things. There's a designation. Spontaneous apostatic amnesia syndrome. Official inquisitorial terminology. How many cases? Someone asks. The records I found documented 47 worlds, over 600 years, thousands of individuals, maybe more. The documentation is fragmented, redacted, but it's happened before, many times. What's the cure? The scribe doesn't answer. He doesn't need to. You all know what the cure is. Fire. You meet 3 more times over the next month. Never the same location twice. Never the same time. Never for longer than an hour. The paranoia is constant, crushing. Every shadow could be an inquisitorial agent. Every prayer session could be a test. Every interaction could be the moment you're discovered. But the connection, the relief of not being alone, of being able to speak honestly about the absence without fear of immediate execution, is intoxicating. More powerful than any doctrine, more compelling than any threat. And that's when it happens. Brother Matthias doesn't show up to the 5th meeting. 3 days later, you hear he was arrested during morning prayers. Arbeit's agents, backed by an ecclesiarchy interrogator. They took him right out of the chapel, in front of everyone. The official statement says he was found harboring heretical texts. The unofficial whispers say he confessed under interrogation. He gave names. You know this because 2 days after his arrest, the young factory worker vanishes, just doesn't show up to work. Her HAB unit is emptied, no record of her. She's been memory holed, erased from official existence as if she never was. Then the woman from the morning assembly, arrested at her workstation, dragged away without explanation. The network is collapsing. Someone talked, and now the Inquisition is rolling up the entire cell. It's only a matter of time before they reach you. You burn the coordinates, destroy any evidence of the meetings. Prepare yourself for the inevitable knock on your door, but it doesn't come. Days pass, a week, 2 weeks, no arrest, no interrogation, no Arbeits agents at your HAB unit. You begin to think maybe you escaped notice. Maybe Brother Matthias didn't know your name, didn't know enough to identify you specifically. Maybe you're safe. You're not. You're just last on the list. Because what's coming for you isn't standard Arbeits enforcement. What's coming is something far more sophisticated, far more terrifying. What's coming has been watching you since the first moment you forgot his name, and they've been waiting to see how far you would fall before they intervened, because the Inquisition doesn't just punish heresy. Sometimes, if the heresy is useful enough, they recruit it. The void isn't empty. You understand this now. In the weeks since Brother Matthias's arrest, since the network collapsed, since you've been alone again with your absence, you've come to understand something the ecclesiarchy knows but will never admit. The human mind abhors vacuum. When the Emperor's presence fades, when that vast cognitive architecture of devotion begins to crumble, something has to fill the space. Nature won't allow the void to persist. The warp won't allow it. And so, slowly, imperceptibly, something else begins to seep in through the cracks. At first, you think it's just your own thoughts, your own doubts and fears and questions, finally given room to exist without being immediately crushed by mandatory devotion. That would be manageable, understandable, human, but these aren't your thoughts. It starts in the spaces between. You're transcribing a document, routine work, muscle memory, your hands moving automatically across the data slate, when a thought occurs to you. The architecture of this hive follows the same pattern as a neural network. If you trace the transportation corridors as neurons and the HAB blocks as synaptic junctions, you can see the intelligence embedded in the structure itself. The hive is thinking. The hive is alive. The hive knows you. You stop working. Read back what you just thought. That's not. That doesn't sound like you. The phrasing is wrong. The perspective is off. You don't think about architecture in those terms. You barely understand neural networks beyond basic cogitator function. So where did that thought come from? You shake your head. Return to work, but the thought lingers, and worse, when you leave work that evening, when you walk through the HAB corridors, you can't unsee it. The pattern, the neural network mapped onto physical space, the way crowds flow like electrical impulses, the way the hive breathes and pulses and lives, it's beautiful, and you never would have noticed it before. The dreams intensify. Every night now, the throne room, but the details are getting clearer. The figure sitting there is no longer just darkness or absence. It's taking shape, not physical form exactly, more like the impression of form, the suggestion of it. It has no face, but you can feel its attention, vast, patient, infinitely old and infinitely interested in you specifically, and it speaks. Not in words. You can never remember words when you wake, just meaning, concepts poured directly into your consciousness. You've carried such weight for so long, the weight of devotion, the weight of fear, the weight of being a fortress wall when you wanted to be human. You can put it down now. I'll carry it for you. You wake up crying, not from fear, from relief, because for just a moment in that dream space you felt what it would be like to not have to perform. To not have to maintain constant vigilance against your own thoughts, to not have to be terrified every second that you'll forget a prayer or miss a devotion or fail a loyalty check. The dream voice offers freedom from fear, and you want it. Oh, Emperor. Oh no, not Emperor, you don't pray to him anymore, do you? You want it so badly it aches. You're staring at your reflection in the wash basin, water running. The face looking back at you is your own, 54 years old, worn, tired, unremarkable, and then for just a second it smiles. You're not smiling, your face is neutral, but the reflection's mouth curves upward, gentle, kind, almost affectionate, and it mouths a word, finally. You stagger backward, hit the wall. The reflection is normal again, just you looking terrified, water still running in the basin. You stand there for 5 minutes, heart pounding, telling yourself it was a trick of the light. Fatigue, stress, hallucination. But you know what you saw. Something is using your face, looking out through your eyes, wearing your reflection like a mask. And it's pleased with your progress. The corruption, because that's what this is, you know that is subtle, insidious. It doesn't announce itself with tentacles or mutations or obvious signs of chaos. It doesn't need to. It just makes things easier. You're at a mandatory prayer session when you realize you're speaking words you don't know. Your mouth is forming the shapes of the Imperial liturgy. The overseer can see your lips moving, can verify you're participating. But your mind is saying something else entirely. Eightfold is the path. Eightfold is the truth. 8 points of the star, 8 roads to enlightenment, 8 ways to see what was hidden, 8 keys to unlock what was sealed. You don't know this prayer, don't know where it came from. Don't know what language it's in, though you understand it perfectly. It's flowing out of you like water from a broken pipe, filling the space where Imperial devotion used to be. And the terrifying part is that it feels right, natural. Like this is what you were always supposed to be saying, and the Imperial prayers were the intrusion, the foreign element, the corruption. The warp has an answer for everything. For every doubt the Imperium instilled in you, the warp has a counter-argument. For every fear, a soothing explanation. For every question you were never allowed to ask, an answer that makes perfect, terrible sense. Why does faith require so much enforcement? Because it's not natural. Because humans aren't meant to worship. Because the emperor built his empire on lies and genetic manipulation and forced conditioning, and it takes constant maintenance to prevent people from realizing the chains around their minds. Why does doubt feel like clarity? Because it is clarity. Because seeing the truth always feels like waking up. Because the Imperium needs you blind and obedient and terrified, and the moment you stop being those things, you start being real. Why do the dreams feel kind? Because kindness exists beyond the Imperium's borders. Because there are powers in the warp that don't demand sacrifice and suffering and endless devotion. Because you've been told all your life that anything beyond the Emperor's light is horror. But what if that's just propaganda? What if the darkness is only terrifying because you were taught to fear it? These aren't your thoughts. You know they aren't your thoughts. They have the fingerprints of something else, something that's been whispering in the empty spaces, shaping your cognition, gently guiding you toward conclusions that serve its purposes, not yours. But you can't refute them, because they make sense. More sense than the Imperium's explanations ever did. You're at your workstation when your hand moves without permission. The stylus lifts. Presses against the data slate. Draws 8 lines, radiating from a central point. Each line curved in ways that hurt to perceive directly. The symbol from your dreams. The symbol you've been seeing everywhere, in the shadows of the hive architecture, in the patterns of crowd movement, in the static on dead Vox channels. You try to stop. Your hand doesn't respond. It keeps drawing, adding details, whorls and spirals and geometric shapes that fold in on themselves. Mathematics made visible. The underlying structure of reality rendered in 2-dimensional space. It's beautiful, hypnotic, wrong in ways you lack the vocabulary to describe, and you can't look away. The stylus adds one more element, a single word written in a script you don't recognize but can read perfectly. Soon. Then your hand releases, control returns. The stylus drops from your fingers, you stare at what you've drawn. You should delete it. Should purge it from the data slate and run a full memory wipe to ensure no trace remains. Should report yourself to the nearest confessor and beg for immediate intervention before the corruption spreads further. You don't. Instead, you sit there, looking at the symbol, and you feel something you haven't felt in the Imperium's mandatory devotions, in the crushing weight of enforced faith, in the endless performance of loyalty. You feel seen, not judged, not evaluated, not measured against impossible standards and found perpetually wanting, just seen, acknowledged, recognized as an individual consciousness rather than an interchangeable component in the Imperium's vast machinery. And that recognition, that simple moment of being noticed for who you are rather than how well you perform, it's more intoxicating than any drug, more addictive than any pleasure, more powerful than 42 years of Imperial conditioning. Because for the first time in your life you matter, not as a scribe, not as a faithful servant, not as a taxpayer or a tithe generator or a warm body maintaining the Imperium's impossibly vast bureaucracy. You matter as you. And the thing offering you this recognition, the thing that's been slowly, carefully, patiently filling the void where the Emperor used to be, is more than happy to continue. All you have to do is keep forgetting. Your handwriting is changing. It's subtle at first, a slight alteration in the way you form certain letters, a tendency toward flourishes that weren't there before, a habit of adding small decorative elements to your signature. Then it becomes more pronounced. The letters start to curve at impossible angles. The spacing becomes rhythmic, almost musical. You find yourself writing in spirals rather than lines, the text coiling inward toward a central point. Someone at work comments on it. Your handwriting looks different. Are you feeling well? You look down at the document you've been transcribing. The words are correct. The information is accurate. But the physical act of writing has transformed into something else. Something that resembles calligraphy more than standard Gothic script. Something beautiful. I'm fine, you say, just trying a new style. They accept this. Why wouldn't they? It's just handwriting. It's not heresy to have neat penmanship, but you know better. The warp is expressing itself through you, using your hands, leaving its fingerprints on reality through the simple act of putting stylus to parchment. And you're letting it, because the alternative is to go back, to rebuild the walls, to force the Emperor's presence back into your mind through sheer effort of will, to re-embrace the fear and the mandatory devotion and the constant, crushing surveillance of your own thoughts. And you don't want to. The most damning realization of all, you don't want to go back. Time starts to slip. You'll sit down to work and suddenly 3 hours have passed. Or you'll close your eyes for a moment of rest, and when you open them, only seconds have elapsed. The chronometers still function. The hab-block schedules still run, but your perception of time has become plastic, malleable. Sometimes moments stretch into eternities. You'll be walking through a corridor and each step will take subjective hours. You can examine every detail of the rockcrete walls, count every rivet in every support beam, trace every crack in every panel. The world becomes infinitely rich, infinitely complex. You see patterns within patterns, structures within structures, the fractal nature of reality revealing itself at every scale. Other times, hours vanish. You'll be at your desk, and then suddenly you're at home with no memory of the transit between. The day just skips, like a damaged recording, frames missing, continuity broken. You should be terrified. This is textbook warp touch, temporal distortion, psychic contamination. The kind of symptoms that, if reported, would result in immediate quarantine and probable execution. But it doesn't feel wrong. It feels like your perception is finally matching reality. Like you spent your whole life seeing only 3 dimensions, and now a 4th and 5th and 6th are becoming visible. Like you're waking up to what the universe actually is, beyond the Imperium's carefully curated lies. You don't need as much sleep anymore. This should be impossible. The human body requires sleep. It's not optional, but you find yourself lying awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, not tired, not restless, just present, aware, existing in a state of calm alertness that extends through the night. And when sleep does come, it's not really sleep. It's something else. A different state of consciousness where the dreams aren't dreams at all but meetings, consultations, lessons. The figure on the throne teaches you things. Not overtly, not through lectures or instruction, just through presence, through exposure. You exist in that throne room space, and understanding flows into you like water into an empty vessel. You learn that the warp isn't chaos, it's complexity. Order so vast and multidimensional that it appears chaotic to limited mortal perception. The patterns are there. The structure exists. You just need to develop the ability to see it. You learn that the Emperor isn't a god. He's a tyrant. A powerful psyker who used his abilities to enslave humanity under the banner of protection. A jailer who convinced his prisoners that the cells are for their own good. You learn that there are other powers in the warp, other consciousnesses. Some malevolent, yes, but some indifferent, some curious. Some that would welcome humanity not as slaves or sacrifices, but as participants in something vaster than the crude materialism of the Imperium. And you learn that you, Pious Kendall, unremarkable scribe, 54 years old, forgotten by everyone who's ever known you, are important. Because every mind that breaks free from Imperial conditioning is a victory. Every human who remembers how to think without fear is a step towards something new. You wake from these dreams feeling better, clearer, calmer, more yourself than you've ever been. And this, more than anything else, is what tells you the corruption is complete. Because you're not fighting it anymore, you're embracing it. There's a moment, you can't pinpoint exactly when it happens, but there's a moment when you realize you're not sure what the Emperor looks like anymore. You can describe him. You know the iconography, golden armor, hawkish features, eyes that burn with psychic fire, the weight of ages in his expression. But you can't picture him. Can't assemble the mental image. The features won't cohere. Instead, when you think about divinity, when you reach for the concept of God power, what appears in your mind is the throne room, the figure made of patient darkness, the presence that asks nothing but offers everything. The transition is complete. You've forgotten the Emperor, and something else has taken his place. You're at a street shrine. You still go through the motions, still perform the rituals of devotion because survival requires performance. When you hear yourself speak a prayer you don't recognize. They told us you protect, but from what I understand now, you don't protect us from dangers outside. You protect us from the absence of danger, from peace, from silence, from the terrible, beautiful emptiness that existed before you claimed every human mind as your fortress. We're not your children. We're your garrison, manning the walls of our own thoughts, and I've abandoned my post. The words pour out, quiet but fervent, genuine, more honest than any Imperial prayer you've ever spoken. And when you finish, you feel something you never felt in decades of mandatory devotion. You feel satisfied, like you finally said what you actually believed rather than reciting what you were told to believe. The void isn't empty anymore, it's full, rich, alive with possibilities that the Imperium spent your entire life teaching you to fear. And you're not afraid, not anymore, you're free. Or at least that's what the voice in the void wants you to think. You're at your desk when the hand touches your shoulder. No warning, no approach. One moment you're alone, transcribing tithe assessments, and the next moment there's a presence behind you. The touch is gentle, almost kind. Pious Kendall. The voice is female, calm, carrying the authority of someone who's never had to raise their voice to be obeyed. You're tired. Come with me. You turn. 3 figures stand behind you. Unmarked armor, void black ceramite with no insignia, no decoration, no identifying marks. Inquisitorial agents. You've never seen one in person, but you know what they are. Everyone knows. You should run, should scream, should do something. But the exhaustion crashes over you like a physical wave. You are tired, so tired. You've been performing loyalty for so long, maintaining the facade while something else eats away at your mind from the inside. Part of you is almost relieved. Yes, you say, all right. You stand. Around you, 300 scribes continue working. No one looks up. No one reacts. This has been prearranged, planned, possibly for weeks. They knew where you were, what you were doing, how far you'd fallen. They've been watching the entire time. The agents escort you out of the administratum complex, not roughly, not with violence, just firmly, inevitably, like water flowing downhill. You walk through corridors you pass through every day, except now you're seeing them for the last time. Every face you pass could be the last face you ever see as a free citizen. But free is a strange word to use, isn't it? You weren't free before. You've never been free, just compliant. They take you to a nondescript building 3 levels down from the main hab tiers. The entrance is unmarked. Inside, the architecture changes, cleaner, better maintained, the kind of facility that doesn't appear on official maps. Black site, inquisitorial holding area, the place where people vanish. You're led to a small room, not a cell, not a torture chamber, just a room 4 meters square, a table, 2 chairs, a small shrine in the corner, an aquila and a candle. Someone's idea of mercy, perhaps. One last chance to pray before the interrogation begins. They leave you there, you sit, wait. Try to prepare yourself for pain, for mind scraping, for the psychic interrogation techniques the Inquisition is famous for. They'll tear through your memories like razor blades through silk. They'll find everything, every doubt, every dream, every moment you've spent communing with the thing in the void. And then they'll kill you, probably, or lobotomize you, or turn you into a servitor, whatever punishment fits the particular flavor of your heresy. The door opens. A woman enters, 60 years old perhaps. Gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, scars on her face, 3 parallel lines running from her left temple down to her jaw, old burns on her hands. She wears simple robes, dark red, with the inquisitorial eye embroidered on the shoulder. Small, understated. You only notice it because you're looking. She's carrying a tea service. She sets it on the table, pours 2 cups, sits across from you. Drink, she says. It's not poisoned. If I wanted you dead, you'd already be dead. You take the cup. The tea is real, actual tea leaves, not the synthetic swill available to citizens. The steam carries hints of bergamot and something floral, luxury, comfort. She sips her own tea, studies you. Her eyes are brown, tired, carrying the weight of things seen that can't be unseen. I'm Inquisitor Lyra Verdon, she says. Ordo Hereticus. I've been tracking you since the first morning you forgot his name. Your hands tighten on the teacup. 3 months. She's known for 3 months. Tell me when it started, she continues. And please don't lie, I already know, I just need to hear you say it. So you tell her. What choice do you have? She knows, she's always known. You describe that first morning, the blank space where his name should have been, the progression, the stages of loss, the others you found, the dreams, the thing in the void. The corruption that feels like freedom. She listens without interrupting, takes notes on a data slate, nods occasionally. When you finish, she sets down her tea and looks at you with something that might be sympathy. You think you're a heretic, she says. You're not, you're a casualty. You blink, what? This happens more than anyone admits. Do you know how many worlds we've sterilized? Not for chaos corruption, not for genestealer infiltration, not for rebellion, for silence. She pauses. For what you're experiencing. Spontaneous apostatic amnesia syndrome, the forgetting, it spreads like a disease. We can't risk letting it spread. How many? 47 documented cases, entire populations, millions of people. Virus bombed from orbit because they stopped remembering how to be afraid of forgetting. The number is incomprehensible. You sit there trying to process it. Millions exterminated for the crime of forgetting. The Emperor's light is like radiation, Verdon continues. Constant exposure keeps the warp at bay, but some minds, they metabolize it differently, build up resistance, become immune. It's genetic, 1 in a billion, an evolutionary dead end that crops up anyway because genetics don't care about theological convenience. So I was always going to forget. Eventually, yes, you didn't choose this. Your mind is an aberration. You could have been the most faithful servant in the Imperium and it would still have happened, because faith for you isn't sustainable. Your neural architecture literally can't maintain the conditioning long-term. She slides a book across the table, the Lectitio Divinitatis, gold-embossed cover, sacred text of the Imperial Creed. Open it, she says. Read to me. Your hands tremble as you open the book. The pages are beautiful, illuminated manuscripts, each letter a work of art. You find a passage at random, begin to read. The words swim. Reform. They're no longer in Gothic. They're something else, something older. A language you've never studied but understand perfectly. Your lips move, speaking the sounds aloud. Eightfold is the way. 8 paths to dissolution. 8 keys to unlock the gates. 8 truths to unmake the lies. You stop, horror crashes over you. Those aren't the words on the page. Those aren't. But they are. You look down. The text on the physical page is still Gothic, still the Lectitio. But your brain is translating it, filtering it through something else, seeing the words beneath the words. Verdun nods slowly. You see, the void has already been filled. You're not empty, you're occupied. What's in me? Your voice is barely a whisper. Tzeentch, the architect of fate, the changer of ways, one of the 4 great powers of chaos. He's been whispering to you since the first moment you created space for him to whisper into. The dreams, the thoughts, the symbols, all of it, him. The name hits you like a physical blow. You've heard it before, whispered warnings, cautionary tales, sermons about the dangers of forbidden knowledge. Tzeentch. The god of change and scheming and the corruption of intellect. The Emperor's faith isn't love, Verdun says quietly. It's cognitive armor. Without it, the human mind is porous. The warp seeps through, not in a day, not in a dramatic possession. Slowly, gently, like water through limestone. You're not being corrupted. You're being saturated. You sit there numb. Everything makes sense now. The kindness, the feeling of being seen, the seductive clarity. It was never freedom. It was just a different cage, trading one tyrant for another. What happens now? You ask. Verdun refills her tea, takes a long sip. That depends on you. I'm going to offer you 3 options. Choose carefully. Quick, painless. A bolt round to the back of the head. Your service record will be amended to read, died in faithful service, blessing of the Emperor. Your name goes on the memorial wall. Your family, if you have any, receives a pension. It's merciful, clean. You won't have to face what you've become. You won't have to fight the thing living in your head. You just stop. She says it so matter-of-factly, like she's discussing ration distributions. But there's no cruelty in her voice, just practicality. This is probably the kindest option she offers anyone. Neural scrubbing, chemotherapy, surgical excision of corrupted memory centers. We'll cut the contaminated parts out of your brain and rebuild what's left with loyalty conditioning. Success rate is 12%. Survival rate of the procedure is 34%. Those who survive are functional. They remember the Emperor. They can recite prayers. They can work. But they remember nothing else. Not their names, not their lives, not who they were. You'll be loyal, but you won't be you. You'll be a servitor with better conversation skills. Worse than death. Living lobotomy. Existence without identity. Verdun leans forward. This is the one she wants you to choose. You can see it in her eyes. We need people like you. People who can touch the warp without immediately screaming. People who have been exposed to corruption but retain enough of themselves to be useful. The Inquisition has special roles. You'd serve on the edge of the abyss, walking the line between damnation and salvation every single day. We'd give you back the Emperor through chemical and surgical means, constant medication, neural implants. But you'd always be one step from falling. You'd spend your remaining time detecting warp taint, identifying corruption, serving as a psychic canary in situations where normal humans would be instantly overwhelmed. How long would I serve? 18 months, maybe 2 years if you're lucky. Then the strain becomes too much. Either the corruption consumes you completely and we have to execute you, or the constant exposure drives you insane and we have to execute you, or the medications fail and we have to execute you. But for that 1.5 years, you'd do the most important work in the Imperium. You'd save lives, protect worlds, make a difference. And no one would know. No one would know. Your service would be classified. Your death would be recorded as an accident. But the work would matter. It would mean something. 3 options: death, lobotomy, slow destruction. You should choose option 1. It's the cleanest, the most merciful. You're 54 years old. You've lived a life, not a good life, but a life. Going out quickly without pain with your identity intact, that's the best you could hope for. But you hear yourself say, Option 3, I'll serve. Verding doesn't look surprised. Why? Because some terrible part of you wants to see where this goes. Because you've spent your entire life doing what you were told, believing what you were told to believe, and now, even knowing it's corruption, even understanding what's in your head, you want to choose something, even if it's slow suicide, because you're not ready to stop existing. I want to matter, you say, even if it's brief, even if no one knows. I want my life to have meant something more than 54 years of transcribing tithe assessments. Verding nods, stands, extends her hand. You shake it. The deal is made. Welcome to the hidden war, she says. You'll spend the rest of your short life remembering the Emperor while communing with things that want to make you forget him. It's the most important work in the Imperium, and no one will ever know you did it. She pauses at the door, looks back. One more thing, the others in your network, they made the same choice, almost all of them. Do you know what that tells me? What? That people who have tasted freedom, even false freedom, even corrupted freedom, can't go back to chains. Not willingly. They'll choose slow death over comfortable slavery every time. Her expression is unreadable. I don't know if that's humanity's greatest strength or our most damning flaw. She leaves. You sit alone in the interrogation room, holding a cup of cold tea, and you understand the true horror of the Imperium. The Inquisition isn't cruel. They're pragmatic. They understand the flaw in humanity's design. They know the conditioning fails. They know the Emperor's light isn't eternal protection, just temporary prophylaxis. And their solution isn't to cure the disease. It's to weaponize the infected. 6 months later, you're standing at a viewport on an inquisitorial vessel, the unrelenting truth, somewhere in the Ghoul Stars region. Outside, the void is wrong. The colors don't match reality. Space itself seems to ripple and flex like fabric stretched over something vast moving beneath. This is the edge of the Imperium. The place where real space and the warp blur together, where the Emperor's light grows dim and other things grow bright. This is where you work now. Your title is Cognitive Specialist, 3rd class. It means nothing to anyone outside the Inquisition. Inside, everyone knows what you are, a psychic canary. A broken mind that's sensitive to warp taint precisely because it's already tainted. You're sent into corrupted spaces first before the main investigation team. If you survive, the area is probably safe. If you don't, well, you are going to die soon anyway. You've survived 17 deployments. The average is 4. Every morning you wake at 500 hours. Old habits. And the first thing you do before you're even fully conscious is take your medication. A cocktail of neurosuppressants, antipsychotics, and faith-inducer drugs. 11 different chemicals, all working together to keep the Emperor's presence solid in your mind while simultaneously preventing Tzeentch from fully manifesting through you. Without the medication, the forgetting would return in hours. The void would open. The thing that lives in your head would take over completely. With the medication, you're functional, loyal, useful, barely. Because here's the thing about walking the line between damnation and salvation. The line is thinner than you think. Thinner than anyone who hasn't walked it could imagine. There are moments, 3-4 seconds at most, between waking and medication when you exist in an unfiltered state. No chemical suppression. No artificial faith induction. Just you and the thing that lives in the spaces between your thoughts. And in those moments, you remember what it was like to be free. Let me pull back. Let me show you what this means. Not just for you, Pious Kendall, psychic canary, cognitive specialist, weaponized heretic, but for the Imperium, for humanity, for the entire structure of reality in the 41st millennium. Because your story isn't unique, it's universal. It's the hidden truth underlying every prayer, every devotion, every moment of faith across a million worlds. In our universe, faith is a choice, voluntary, personal. You can believe or not believe, and the universe continues regardless. Your belief doesn't change the fundamental nature of reality. In the Imperium, faith is a biological necessity, not metaphorically, not symbolically, actually. The human mind, unprotected, is a beacon to the warp. Every thought, every emotion, every moment of consciousness creates ripples in the immaterium. And things in the warp are drawn to those ripples, the way predators are drawn to blood in water. The Emperor's faith, the constant, mandatory, overwhelming devotion, isn't spiritual, it's medicinal. A daily dose of conviction that keeps the infection at bay. The prayers aren't requests, they're treatments. The devotionals aren't celebrations, they're chemotherapy for the soul, which raises a question that the ecclesiarchy will never acknowledge. Is any imperial citizen truly faithful, or are they all just terrified of silence? Because if you remove the fear, if you take away the constant threat of chaos, the knowledge that doubt equals damnation, the architectural enforcement and chemical conditioning and social pressure, would anyone choose to worship the Emperor? Or would they choose what you chose in those brief moments before the medication took hold? Freedom. Even poisoned freedom. Even corrupted freedom. Even freedom that leads inevitably to destruction. The choice to stop being afraid. We define ourselves by memory. I remember, therefore I am. Memory is identity. Memory is continuity. Memory is the thread connecting your past self to your present self to your future self. But in the Imperium, memory is weaponized, mandatory, enforced. You don't get to choose what you remember. The Emperor must be remembered because forgetting him means remembering something else. And what lies in the warp has perfect memory. It remembers humanity before the Emperor, before the Imperium, before the Golden Age. It remembers what humans were when they were free to choose their own beliefs, their own gods, their own destinies. It remembers what you could become again. And it whispers those memories into any mind with room to listen, into the void, into the absence, into the 3-second window between waking and medication where the fortress walls come down and the thing you've been protecting yourself from can finally speak. It says, you were never supposed to be slaves. You were supposed to be something magnificent. And the horror is that it's not entirely wrong. The Emperor did enslave humanity. He did impose his will on billions of humans who never consented to his rule. He did create an empire built on fear and genetic manipulation, and the systematic destruction of any alternative way of being human. He did it to protect you from chaos, from the warp, from entities like Tzeentch that would twist humanity into something unrecognizable. But the cost was your freedom, your autonomy, your right to choose. The Emperor saved humanity by making humanity his property. And now, 10,000 years later, you can't tell the difference between protection and imprisonment, between faith and conditioning, between genuine belief and manufactured compliance, because there is no difference, not anymore, not in the Imperium. They're the same thing. The Imperium knows. The highest levels, the Inquisition, the High Lords, perhaps even the Adeptus Custodes, they understand that imperial faith is a dam holding back an ocean, and dams crack. Individuals leak. You leaked. Brother Matthias leaked. The young factory worker, the woman from the morning assembly, the 7 people in the underhive meeting, all leaks. Small cracks in the dam. Worlds sometimes flood. Vorskin III. 46 others documented, probably hundreds more lost to corrupted records and administrative errors. Entire populations that forgot how to be afraid and the ocean poured through. And when that happens, there's only one response: cauterize, burn the infected tissue, virus bomb the corrupted hive, execute the forgetting before forgetting becomes contagious. It's monstrous. It's also perhaps necessary, because what's the alternative? Let the forgetting spread. Let doubt become acceptable. Let people choose whether to believe. The warp would consume humanity in a generation, maybe less. The same freedom that feels so intoxicating, so liberating, so right in those brief moments between waking and medication, that freedom would destroy everyone. This is the math of the 41st millennium. 1 billion deaths to save 1 trillion souls. 1 innocent forgotten to keep a sector remembering. The Imperium is an empire built on necessary evils, on calculations that trade individual rights for collective survival, on the principle that tyranny is preferable to extinction. And the horrible part is that they might be correct, because you've seen what fills the void. You felt its kindness, its patience, its seductive promise of freedom. You've experienced what it's like to commune with something that doesn't demand submission, doesn't require fear, doesn't need constant validation. And you know that Tzeentch would destroy you utterly if given the chance. That the kindness is a lure, that the freedom is a trap. That everything the Imperium taught you about chaos, about the warp, about the necessity of the Emperor's tyranny, it's true. But it's also true that the Imperium's tyranny is real, that the Emperor is a jailer even if the jail is necessary. That faith is manufactured even if the manufacturing is protective. Both things are true simultaneously, and that's the real horror. Not that the Imperium is evil, not that chaos is corrupting, but that there's no good option, no moral high ground. No side that isn't built on suffering. You can choose the Emperor's slavery and live in fear but survive, or you can choose chaos's freedom and feel peace but be destroyed. There is no third option. There never was. Let me show you others, not just you. Others who have faced the same choice, lived in the same impossible situation, navigated the same line between damnation and salvation. The Adeptus Astra Telepathica's Sisters of Silence are blanks, psychic nulls. They feel no connection to the warp. They exist in a state of permanent absence, surrounded by a field that suppresses psychic phenomena. And when they're near, others forget too. Not forget the Emperor specifically, but forget the feeling of faith. Around them, devotion becomes hollow performance. The emotional weight lifts. The connection severs. Faith becomes words without meaning, gestures without conviction. The sisters weaponize this. They're the Imperium's counter to psychers, to demons, to warp-based threats. Their very presence nullifies chaos. But they're also proof of something the ecclesiarchy doesn't want to admit. Remove the warp connection, and faith evaporates. Imperial belief requires the very thing it's designed to protect against. You need the warp to maintain faith. You need the threat of chaos to keep citizens devoted. You need the constant pressure of potential corruption to enforce compliance. The Sisters of Silence are the Imperium's own cognitive dead zones, walking reminders that faith isn't natural. That without the warp whispering in the background, without the constant pressure of potential contamination, humans default to indifference. They're heroes, essential, powerful, and they're also evidence that the entire Imperial faith structure is artificial. Krieger soldiers are famous for suicidal faith, absolute devotion, willingness to die without hesitation for the Emperor's cause. They're the ideal Imperial citizen, unquestioning, obedient, fearless. But it's not natural. It's manufactured through genetic engineering and childhood indoctrination, so total that Kriegers cannot conceive of existence without service to the Emperor. They're the product of 9 generations of selective breeding and psychological conditioning. They're what humanity becomes when you perfect the process of creating loyal soldiers. They're also hollow. Look closely at a Krieger's eyes. Really look. There's no faith there, only void. They remember the Emperor the way a machine remembers its function. Perfect memory, zero understanding. They'll die for him. They'll kill for him. They'll march into fire and radiation and certain death without hesitation. But do they believe? Do they feel devotion? Do they experience faith as anything other than programmed response? Or are they just servitors with better motor functions? Which is more horrifying, to forget the Emperor through natural cognitive decay, like you did, or to remember him perfectly while never understanding why, like the Kriegers? At least you were human once. At least you had the capacity for doubt, for question, for the experience of losing faith and understanding what you lost. The Kriegers never had that. They're born into certainty and die in certainty, and never experience the fundamental human capacity to choose what they believe. They're perfect Imperial citizens. And that's the most damning indictment of the Imperium imaginable. Before they fell, before they became traitors and Chaos Space Marines, the Thousand Sons were loyal, devoted. They sought knowledge above all else, understanding, truth. Magnus the Red, their Primarch, was the Emperor's most psychically gifted son, the one who could have been the greatest asset in humanity's defense against chaos. And he fell because he forgot why the Emperor's warnings mattered, not in defiance, not in rebellion. In pursuit of truth, he asked questions, pursued knowledge, sought to understand the warp rather than simply fear it, and in that pursuit he created space for Tzeentch to whisper, to guide, to corrupt. The Thousand Sons are the cautionary tale. The sermon every confessor uses to justify anti-intellectualism. The proof that knowledge is dangerous, that questions lead to doubt, that curiosity is the first step toward heresy. But they're also proof of something else. Intellectual curiosity in the Imperium is heresy not because it's wrong, but because it's dangerous. The questions Magnus asked had real answers. The knowledge he pursued was genuine. The truths he uncovered about the warp, about the nature of reality, about the Emperor's real purposes, they were true. And that's why he fell. Because truth in a system built on necessary lies is corrosive. Truth creates doubt. Doubt creates space. Space allows corruption. The Imperium maintains itself through ignorance, through fear, through the systematic suppression of any information that might lead citizens to question whether the Emperor's tyranny is truly necessary. And sometimes, like in your case, like in Magnus's case, like in the case of millions of others across the Imperium's history, sometimes people stumble into truth anyway. And truth is where forgetting begins. You're still standing at the viewport. The warp outside churns with colors that hurt to name. You've been here for 6 months. You have 12 left if Verdun's estimate is accurate. Every morning you take your medication. The Emperor's presence returns, solid and heavy and painful, like armor you can't remove, like a weight pressing down on your thoughts, keeping them confined, keeping them safe, keeping them loyal. And every morning, in those 3 or 4 seconds before the medication takes hold, you remember what it was like to be free. The thing in your head, Tzeentch, though you try not to name it because names have power, is patient. It's waiting. It knows the medication will fail eventually. Knows your body will build up resistance, or the dosages will become toxic, or your mind will break under the strain of maintaining 2 contradictory belief systems simultaneously. It knows you're dying. That this service, this hidden war, this weaponization of your corruption, it's all just a slow execution. And it's fine with that. Because every day you survive, every deployment you complete, every corrupted site you investigate, you're spreading the seed of doubt. Not intentionally, not consciously. But you're proof that faith can fail. That the Emperor's presence isn't eternal, that the fortress walls can crack. You're a vector, a carrier. The Inquisition thinks they're using you, but maybe, just maybe, Tzeentch is using them, using you, spreading the contagion one faithful servant at a time. You told Inquisitor Verdun you wanted your life to matter. You wanted to make a difference. You wanted meaning beyond 54 years of transcribing tithe assessments, and now you have it. You stand on the edge of the abyss. You walk the line between damnation and salvation. You serve the Imperium by being everything it fears, a mind that knows what lies beyond faith, that's seen the other side, that understands the choice and chose survival anyway. You save lives. You detect corruption that others can't see because you recognize it in yourself. You identify warp taint because you're warp tainted. You protect the faithful because you remember what it's like to be faithless. You matter. But here's the question you ask yourself every morning in those few seconds of clarity before the medication drowns the doubt. Am I protecting the Imperium? Or am I proving that it's already lost? Because if someone like you, unremarkable, obedient, faithful for 42 years, can forget, then anyone can. If the conditioning can fail in a mid-level scribe with no genetic aberrations, no particular intelligence, no obvious weakness, then it can fail in anyone. The dam isn't just cracked, it's fundamentally flawed. Built on assumptions about human psychology that don't account for people like you, for minds that metabolize faith differently, for the 1 in a billion genetic quirk that makes mandatory devotion impossible to sustain. The Imperium has existed for 10,000 years, 1 million worlds, quadrillions of humans. 1 in a billion means there are millions of people like you, right now, today, forgetting, creating space, becoming vulnerable, and the Inquisition can't stop it. They can hunt you, execute you, weaponize you, but they can't cure you, can't fix the fundamental flaw in the human design that makes some people resistant to conditioning. All they can do is manage the problem, quarantine the outbreaks, sterilize the infected, and hope the math continues to work in their favor. Hope that 1 billion deaths really do save 1 trillion souls. Hope that the dam holds long enough for some future solution, some better answer, some way to protect humanity without enslaving it. But you've seen the other side. You know what fills the void. You understand that the warp is patient and vast and eternal, and it only needs you to forget for 3 seconds to begin the process of corruption. 3 seconds. That's all it takes to doom a soul. And every human in the Imperium is 3 seconds away from heresy. 1 moment of distraction, 1 crack in the conditioning, 1 instant of silence where the prayers don't come automatically. You think you're faithful, maybe you are, but have you ever tested it? Have you ever tried not to remember? Have you ever wondered what's on the other side of devotion? Don't, because the answer is always waiting, and it's patient. And it's so kind. The Emperor protects, he must. Because without him, you'd realize what you really are, fortresses with no one inside, just walls, just defenses, just the fear of what happens when the walls come down. You're not the Emperor's children, you're his garrison, manning the walls of your own thoughts. Fighting a war that never ends, against an enemy that lives inside your own mind, for a cause you've been conditioned to believe in, but never allowed to question. And I, Pious Kendall, cognitive specialist 3rd class, weaponized heretic, psychic canary, forgotten scribe, I stand at this viewport every morning and wonder, is survival worth the price of our minds? Is protection worth the cost of our freedom? Is the Imperium's tyranny justified by humanity's survival, or is it just tyranny with better propaganda? I don't have answers. No one does. Not the Inquisition, not the ecclesiarchy, not the Emperor himself, silent on his golden throne for 10,000 years. But I know this. I remember the Emperor, I have to. It's my job. The medication ensures it. The neural implants reinforce it. The constant exposure to warp taint proves the necessity of it. But I also remember what it was like not to. And that's the thing they don't tell you in the catechisms. That's the truth buried under 10,000 years of propaganda and enforcement and necessary lies. Forgetting felt like freedom. For just a little while my mind was my own, not the Emperor's fortress, not the warp's playground, just mine. I know that's heresy. I know the forgetting was corruption. I know the freedom I felt was a lie, a lure, the warp's sweetest poison. But I also know this. Every human being in the Imperium is 1 thought away from where I was. 1 moment of distraction, 1 crack in the conditioning, 1 instant of silence where the prayers don't come automatically. You think you're safe because you're faithful, but faith in the Imperium isn't armor, it's chains. And chains can break. 16 months after recruitment. 2 months past Inquisitor Verdun's predicted survival time. You're standing at the same viewport looking at the warp. The mission was successful. Another corrupted site identified. Another demon prevented from manifesting. Another world saved through your sacrifice. Your hands are shaking. The medication isn't working as well anymore. Your body is building resistance. The dosages keep increasing, and soon they'll reach toxicity. Soon the chemicals will kill you faster than the corruption would. Your lips are moving, the automatic prayers, the constant recitation, the mandatory remembering, but your eyes are closed, and for just a moment you smile. Because in that darkness behind your eyelids, in that brief window where the medication hasn't quite taken hold and the prayers are just sounds without meaning, you see it. The throne room, the figure made of patient darkness, the presence that's been waiting so patiently for you to finally let go, and it says as it always says, "You can rest now." You open your eyes, the warp churns outside. Your lips continue moving through prayers you don't feel. Your hands reach for the medication dispenser for tomorrow's dose. You're still fighting, still loyal, still serving, but you know how this ends. The same way it ends for everyone in the Imperium, who's ever asked questions they weren't supposed to ask, who's ever felt doubt they weren't supposed to feel, who's ever forgotten what they were commanded to remember. With fire, with purging, with the Imperium protecting itself from the truth of its own fragility, you have 2 months left, maybe 3 if you're lucky. And in that time you'll save worlds, protect citizens, serve the Emperor, all while carrying the knowledge that the Imperium is built on a foundation of sand, that faith is a drug administered through fear, and that every human alive is 3 seconds away from the same realization you had. That freedom exists on the other side of loyalty. That peace exists beyond faith. That the universe doesn't require your devotion to continue existing. These thoughts are heresy. These thoughts are corruption. These thoughts are also true. And that's the horror that will follow you into whatever death the Inquisition eventually grants you. The Imperium's lies are necessary, but they're still lies. The Emperor's tyranny is protective, but it's still tyranny, and you will die to maintain both. Because in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium there is no good choice, no moral victory, no side that isn't built on suffering, only survival, at any cost, forever.